The Hawks wanted not just the war, they wanted escalation. The problem wasn't the war, is that we weren't all in. We weren't totally committed. My dad was like this. He was like, if we're going to fight, we have to go harder. He said the politicians are holding us back. If we're allowed to just go in there and smoke them all, then we'll win. The Dubs were like, what's that going to get you? And the Dubs wanted a quicker settlement. They wanted to get out. The Hawks wanted to win. The Hawks wanted to give the generals in the field the ability to use tactical or nuclear weapons. Tactical nuclear weapons means that you can use weapons if there's going to be a strategic advantage, right? Like in the field.
This sounds like a terrible decision. Wouldn't a nuclear weapon not be an advantage in the field?
Well, it's not like for instance, it wouldn't be like if they're smaller, so it wouldn't be like dropping an H bomb and ending Hanoi, right? It'd be like we think there's a bunch of troops and stores of weapons here. If we nuke this area, then we can attack. Anyway, I'm not a general, nor have I ever planned to use a tactical nuclear weapon, so I can't really. Vietnam also, one thing you hear a lot of people about is the amount of prisoners of war. John McCain's a great example, right? The prisoner of war. There just was I think it was the 40th anniversary we're coming up on the 40th anniversary of them being released. One of the most notorious places where John McCain was nicknamed the Hanoi Hilton, where they broke him. I mean, these are guys who are in confinement, being tortured oftentimes by themselves in solitary confinement for years at a time. I think McCain was there for 5 years. I was interviewed with a guy, a captain on the Air Force, who was there for 6 years. And I mean, John McCain can't lift his arms above his shoulders because of the torture that he got. He's strung up on a rack like this. His arms have been broken so many times and beaten and bruised.
How did he not win the election? Like, I really don't understand.
Yeah, and what's funny, but he's not radical either. He was like a middle of the road, bona fide war hero.
Like, I don't like his politics, but I don't understand how you can't win if you're.
He's one of the things that we always talk about. That the decision is who would you rather have a beer with. McCain's a fun guy too. Like, he's funny. He reaches across the aisle, or used to. Honestly, I think any other year, I think he wins.
Also, Sarah Palin.
Yeah, Sarah Palin killed him. If you watch Game Change, that's really good. Or if you read it, I guess reading it'd be better. But he also did that because he was losing. He was losing by double digits. That was a Hail Mary pass. Obama was a phenomenon. Obama ran, and he was not Bush. He was the anti-Bush. Yeah. And the Obama people did a really good job of painting McCain as the next Bush. Yeah. And it worked. And now, the funny part about it was McCain and Bush hated each other. McCain really hated Bush. In fact, if I was McCain, I wouldn't like Bush for some of the stuff Bush did in 2000. I talked about how he painted him as not being patriotic, right, in 2000 election.
Yeah.
How does that work? How is John McCain painted as being not patriotic, but Bush is a patriot, right? The idiots in South Carolina, and I say that with no love, the idiots in South Carolina, how you're like, yes, John McCain doesn't like our country as much, although he was in a prisoner of war camp for 5 years and has fought for America, and Bush has not, and comes from a wealthy family. Yes, this guy's our patriot. Who does that? South.
Like, that's the worst thing you can think of to do to someone, too. You're like, you're not a patriot.
Yeah. But McCain, people like the inside Republican, like the Republican establishment, they call it, like each side has a kind of establishment. Bush was their guy. He was an establishment guy, and the establishment did not like McCain. So McCain, as he moved towards becoming the nominee, had to buddy up with the establishment, which meant getting closer to Bush, and Obama jumped on it. Had it been Hillary that ran against him, Hillary and McCain are actually really good friends. That would have been a different election. So, I don't know, man. I mean, how do you lose if you're that guy? I guess it's just you get painted. A good example with Obama is he won the Nobel Prize as a first-year president. He had done nothing. Like, I love Obama. He had done nothing. Except one thing. He wasn't Bush. He won a Nobel Prize for not being Bush. That was the world giving a giant middle finger to George Bush.
Yes.
And they were like a postcard of Bush with a puppy, and it was dead, and yeah, Bush killed it. So no, she also hated.
That was, yeah, I mean, honestly, Canada, our closest ally, Canada's our closest ally and our biggest trading partner. The Canadian people were interviewed and asked, there was a poll done, like a national poll done, not every Canadian, but like a poll done. Who is the most dangerous terrorist in the world? And number 1 was Osama bin Laden. And number 2 was George Bush.
What?
Yes.
George Bush, this wasn't like, they weren't interviewing people in Tehran, right? They weren't interviewing people in Damascus. They were interviewing people in Canada. And the Canadian people thought that George Bush was only slightly behind Osama bin Laden as the world's greatest terrorist.
Seems a little.
Yeah, it's silly, but the point is the rest of the world, what we had to do when we went to Iraq, we isolated ourselves from the rest of the world. And the policies were, it used to be, everybody get on board, we're going together. Bush's biggest fault, foreign policy-wise, was, let's get on board. No, we'll go screw yourself, we're doing it anyway. And that's been hard for Obama to sort of get rid of. And Obama hasn't done a great job with that. He's done better than Bush, but he hasn't done as much as he wanted to. What if you are poor? If you're poor, are you going to get drafted or not get drafted? You're going to get drafted because you're more likely to get drafted because if you're in college, you get out of the draft. 18-year-old, 19-year-old poor kids are being drafted. The average age of the World War II soldier was 26. The average, not minimum, the average age of the soldier in Vietnam was 19. So you're talking about kids. And these decisions are affecting whole generations of people. And then it's, you have the Doves who are the minority in early '68. By late '68, the Doves are the majority in Congress, led by a guy, my mom's all-time favorite politician, ironically, also named McCarthy. His name was Eugene McCarthy from Minnesota. My mom, as a child in Catholic school, actually did campaigning for him. Of course, until Bobby Kennedy said he was running. But this guy was a peace-loving, Birkenstock type of guy that was the anti-war candidate. I know. In fact, what's going to happen in the election of '68, which we're going to talk about starting on Wednesday, is it's all about the war. And ironically, the two candidates who come out of this as the Democrat and Republican candidate, neither one of them wanted to end the war. Because Eugene McCarthy didn't get enough votes, and because Bobby Kennedy was assassinated, the only Democrat left was Hubert Humphrey, who was very liberal politically in the domestic front, but was the vice president and wanted to keep the war going. So the war kept going. All right, you guys. Do what? No, I'll do it tomorrow.